Hi there, and welcome to our next term for APUS history. We're going to be talking about nativism. In your APUSH curriculum, sometimes it's referred to as a nativist movement or nativist campaigns. But what it refers to is the attitudes, beliefs, and policies that favor the interests of the native born population over the interests of immigrants. So, in regards to American history, it's not to be confused with preferring Native Americans. It's preferring the white Americans who have been born in America. So the rise of nativism really begins in our early 1800s. Now, it is an American theme throughout US history, but we start seeing more significant sentiments of nativism in our early 1800s. So, this is really due to the rapid increase of immigrant populations in this time period. There was fear over loss of jobs and fear over the loss of the Anglo culture. And so initially there was some rioting that took place, and the early groups that were targeted were the Irish, Germans, and Chinese. Now, as nativism continues throughout American history, other groups are targeted as well. So, this is a famous political cartoon. One of the best ways to study nativism, I believe, is by looking at the political cartoons of the time period because they are extremely explicit in their opposition to immigration. So, here is showing the poorhouse from Galway. This is going to be a poorhouse from Ireland, which was a common source of immigration in our early 1800s. And so, really, there starts to be movements to limit the number of undesirables. Immigrants that were seen as undesirable might have medical conditions or were poor. It could be certain types of women that were coming, or more specifically, certain races like the Chinese. So, what happens in 1837 is there's a formal anti immigrant group that begins. And then that group becomes part of or eventually becomes the Know Nothing political party, which actually ran a candidate in the early 1800s or mid 1800s, I should say. So this is a strongly anti-Catholic, anti-immigrant group that calls for restrictions on immigration, exclusion of immigrants from voting and holding office, and a 21-year wait for citizenship. So the nativists in government were successful in actually passing various legislative acts throughout history. Here are just a few of the ones you might come across in APUS history. So probably the most well-known nativist legislation is going to be the Chinese Exclusion Acts, which is going to bar immigration from China. The Gentleman's Agreement is going to be with Japan. And the Immigration Act of 1917 is going to start to put in certain components to try to limit the number of undesirables and also make it even more explicit which regions are allowed to send immigrants. The Immigration Act of 1924 is going to implement quotas. So it's going to set a certain percentage on the number of immigrants from each country. And it's going to have preferential amounts for Northern and Western Europe. And then we also see in that same year the establishment of the Border Patrol. So these are all things you may come across in the APUSH curriculum and are all examples of nativism. So, what is the significance of this term? Well, it's a major theme in American history. It's most emphasized in period 5 and period 7, and it is most clearly observed through legislative actions. So, knowing a few of those legislative actions would be really helpful if you ever have to answer a short answer question or a long essay question, something like that. We see it as a backlash to intense increases in immigration. So, oftentimes, when you see rapid increases in immigration, you see a backlash, something that's trying to go against that. And that's when we often see the political cartoons rise up as well. It really demonstrates the cultural conflict around what America's ideals are and what an American identity means. So, I hope this quick video was helpful for you. And if so, please like and subscribe.